But a universal coronavirus vaccine might protect against not only COVID-19, but against MERS, against the original SARS-1, and against the seasonal coronaviruses that circulate around the world every year. So a universal coronavirus vaccine is an even more difficult target. So we think it's possible in theory. Several groups are working on what we call broadly protective COVID-19 vaccines. Some of the earliest versions have been in human clinical trials. My name is Jerome Kim. I'm the Director General of the International Vaccine Institute in Seoul, South Korea. IVI was founded in 1997 as an initiative of the United Nations Development Program, and it is the first international organization to be headquartered in Korea. My background is that I'm trained in infectious diseases and internal medicine, and did HIV vaccine development for 20 years before retiring from the US Army and joining IVI as its Director General. I think let's go back to why we vaccinate people to begin with. We vaccinate people in order to prevent severe complications of COVID. In this case, severe disease, hospitalization, and death. And we know that the existing vaccines, all of the vaccines approved by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety here in Korea, and the vaccines approved by the World Health Organization, or what we call emergency use listed by the World Health Organization, prevent severe disease, hospitalization, and death. Not only that, they continue to protect people against hospitalization and death, even after some of the antibody levels appear to have dropped. We get better protection, and this has been shown in studies now, after a person is boosted, and particularly against the variants. Again, the problem is that if we were dealing only with the virus that we had originally, the current set of vaccines would be great. The problem is that what's circulating now is not the virus we were dealing with in 2020. It's the Omicron, typically the Omicron BA4/BA5 viruses that are circulating now around the world. The problem is that if you were infected with Omicron back in December or January of this year, you can be infected by BA5 now. So both vaccine-induced protection, the protection induced by natural infection, and by what we call hybrid immunity, those people who were vaccinated and then infected, can still be infected by BA5. The vaccines, however, continue to work to protect people against disease and death. And those are the most important things. Unfortunately, vaccine-induced protection lasts only a matter of months against the Omicron variants, particularly BA4/5. And so there's a recommendation for additional boosting. Now with the passage of time and with multiple waves of infections of Omicron, the original Omicron and now BA4/5, people are immune protection, that is the defensive responses induced by immunization and by infection, become much more complicated. We know that the boosters work, and the approved vaccines, that is Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and now the SK vaccine, when used as boosters, all are effective in temporarily lifting the protective responses. How long will this last against BA5 or whatever the new circulating variant is? Maybe it will be BA2.75, which is the latest one that people are concerned about. We don't know. And that's the reason why many groups are thinking now about the easiest step, which is to make what we call a bivalent vaccine. That is to combine the original vaccine, the original Wuhan strain of vaccine, with one of the Omicrons, either BA1, which is what was tested recently, or BA4 and 5, which is what the US Food and Drug Administration recommended, a bivalent Wuhan BA5 vaccine. They have the Wuhan BA1 vaccines already, but that's not what the US Food and Drug Administration recommended. So it's going to take the companies a little while longer to develop the bivalent Wuhan and BA5. If we had a universal coronavirus vaccine, that might potentially be even better, but unfortunately we don't. That work hasn't advanced far enough to be able to guarantee people vaccination this year. So right now, it doesn't matter if you get Moderna, Pfizer, SK. Actually in Korea you can get Novavax. And Novavax has also been approved by the US Food and Drug Administration. So all of those vaccines are effective. Why did I take a protein vaccine as my 4th dose yesterday? I think that protein vaccines have some advantages, and in particular, the proteins are combined with another substance, a chemical we call an adjuvant. And both the vaccine from SK, which has the AS03 adjuvant, and the vaccine from Novavax, which has a matrix M adjuvant, may give you much higher and more prolonged protection against some of the variants. The other reason to use protein vaccines is that we've had a much longer history of using protein vaccines. In general, the side effect profile is better than it is with the RNA vaccines. So we think it's possible in theory. Several groups are working on what we call broadly protective COVID-19 vaccines. We would like them to be universal, that is, protect against all current and potentially future COVID-19 variants. Some of the earliest versions have been in human clinical trials. One of the problems here is going to be, how do we test it? And how do we get it approved now that people all over the world have been either vaccinated or infected? So we're not going to look at primary protection. We're going to be looking at these new vaccines as a booster. And how do we prove that they're broadly protective? And will the regulatory agencies accept the proof that we're able to generate from the clinical trials? So that's a really key question that we have, and it's a regulatory question. The second part is an even more interesting potential variant on this, and that's a universal coronavirus vaccine. So a vaccine that not only protects against COVID-19, or we call it COVID-19 as SARS-CoV-2, but a universal coronavirus vaccine might protect against not only COVID-19, but against MERS, against the original SARS-1, and against the seasonal coronaviruses that circulate around the world every year. So a universal coronavirus vaccine is an even more difficult target. And I guess the next step would be those vaccines to prevent infection and transmission and protect mucosal surfaces. So again, all of this is work that needs to be done. We haven't made all that much progress. We're not near the stage of what we call phase 3 testing yet. But later this year or maybe early next year, we'll start seeing some of the data that are being, the laboratory results that are being generated from these new vaccines, and hopefully we'll have a promising candidate. Okay, thanks.